It's that time of year again, folks, and since Christmas is right around the corner, depending on when I release this video, I thought I'd make a video to celebrate. I was originally going to make a video around Thanksgiving talking about that really weird international shift that Thomas and Percy's Christmas adventure got here in the US. Then I realized that the Unlucky Tug already made a video with that episode, so screw it, let's talk about some Christmas episodes. The Christmas episodes in Thomas are either hits or misses. You'll get great ones like Thomas and the Missing Christmas Tree, and then you'll get episodes that'll make you want to rip your eyes out using a doorknob, like Thomas's frosty friend. Great typo, guys. But despite this, Thomas usually has done great with their Christmas and winter episodes. So I thought that today, I'd review some on a tier list and see what the best Christmas episode is. Keep in mind, I'm not covering every Christmas episode because Thomas Fan 261 has already done that, so I've decided to talk about the ones that are from one of the DVDs. This being the Ultimate Christmas DVD that was released in 2007. The DVD contains 2 episodes from Season 1, 1 episode from Seasons 2, 3, 4, and 5, and 3 episodes from Season 6. Now, what's kind of interesting about this DVD is that it only released here in the US and Canada. There were also 2 songs that were put onto this DVD, these being the Snow Song and Winter Wonderland. I'm not really gonna talk about them much, really. I mean, they sound okay for, like, Thomas songs, I guess. I don't know how to review music. I'm not Anthony Fantano or whatever his name is.
Found a rapper.
But yeah, with a brief history of the DVD said, let's get into it and see what the best Christmas episode in Thomas is. Starting with...
It was wintertime on the island of Sodor. The snow covered fields and railway lines.
All the engines were hard at work.
Snow starts with Thomas clearing some snow by a tunnel and he eventually gets stuck. Rusty chimes in saying that this winter is as bad as the worst one of all, and Thomas asks how bad that winter was. Rusty decides to tell a story. The story starts with Skarloey working at the slate mines in the snow and says that the workmen have used the snow as a double buffer system to help stop trucks running by. Skarloey is on his way to the slate mines one day and the winch at the mines seems to be having trouble. Skarloey stops at the ravine and his driver points out that it might be dangerous to cross since they might cause an avalanche. They install an emergency cap on the track and test it out. Nothing happens, so his driver says that they'll have a cup of cocoa and set off. Up above at the mines, a long line of trucks is being winched down the slope and another set of trucks going up derail. This causes the winch to snap and the set of trucks run down the slope, fly through the buffers in the snowbank, and fall into a ravine. This causes an avalanche to occur and Skarloey is right in the middle of it. He pretty brutally gets buried in the snow and the heat from Skarloey's engine helped to make an igloo. Thomas and Rusty joke around for a bit, and then Gordon with this big-ass snow machine blows snow everywhere.
He stopped by the tunnel and wheezed loudly. Then it happened. Oh no. Help! Cried Gordon.
This episode overall was pretty good. It's got a pretty good story and the avalanche sequence was really well executed. Not to mention the ending with Gordon's snow machine. I don't know why, the way Gordon says, "Oh no," is so funny.
Oh no.
I'm thinking a solid B on this one. Overall, pretty good. Thomas's Christmas party starts with it being Christmas on the island of Sodor. Shocker, I know. And Toby and Thomas are shown carrying people and parcels up and down the branch line. As Thomas puffs by, he notices a woman called Mrs. Kindly waving at him. He peeps back and wishes her a happy Christmas. Later, Thomas arrives at the sheds and everyone there got new coats of paint. Gordon boasts about this and Thomas tells the engines that it's been a year since Mrs. Kindly helped Thomas by warning him about a landslide ahead. The other engines say that they still haven't thanked her properly and Thomas says that they should all throw her a special Christmas party. The engines are all busy making plans when Sir Topham Hatt tells them that Mrs. Kindly has been snowed up due to the weather. He orders Thomas to go help her with Toby, and later they're shown plowing through the branch line. Thomas whistles and Mrs. Kindly waves back. Then Terence is shown arriving to help her by clearing a patch of snow to the tracks. The rescue is complete and they set off back to the sheds. It's completely dark and no one was seen until...
All the lights went on. What a marvelous sight awaited Mrs. Kindly.
Topham, who's funnily enough standing on Legos in this shot, congratulates Toby and Thomas for their hard work, and the episode ends with all the engines singing "We Wish You a Merry Christmas."
We wish you a Merry Christmas, we wish you a Merry Christmas, we wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
If I had to pick a word to describe this episode, it would be sweet. This is a very sweet episode. The bond between Mrs. Kindly and the engines is just so nice to watch, man. And that ending is so worth it, with all the engines having little Santa hats. Hell, even Birdie has one. This episode kind of gives you that comfy Christmas feeling. I don't know how to describe it, but it just makes you feel good. This one is definitely going into S tier. Anyone who disagrees will be thrown out my window accordingly. Don't mess with me! It's 2 days before Christmas, and all the engines were busy with the final preparations for the carol party. Topham tells Thomas to go and fetch the Christmas tree, and he sets off. On his way back, Thomas runs into a snowdrift and gets stuck as more snow falls on top of him. Meanwhile, the other engines are getting impatient, and... Wait, why does Donald have Edward's angry face? What is it with Edward and, like, the weird face mask swapping? Like... I don't get it! Anyways, Topham tells the engines that the snow has brought the telephone poles down and assumes that Thomas is stranded. Donald and Douglas set off to go and help Thomas, and this Christmassy version of their theme is actually really good. They arrive at the snowdrift, and the workmen decide how to dig away at the snow. At last, Thomas and the tree are freed from the snow. They arrive back at the sheds, and Topham tells them that they can go enjoy the carols at the big station as a reward. The station lights up, and Topham gives a small speech crediting Thomas and his friends' hard work for making the event possible. Oh, and Diesel's there too, I guess. Then Harold arrives, and out comes Santa. Wait, what? Not gonna lie, the shot of him and Topham shaking hands actually kind of goes hard.
It's no fun getting stuck in the snow, whispered Thomas to Percy, but it was worth it for this party. Happy holiday, Percy. Happy holiday, everyone.
This episode, a lot like the last one, gives me that weird Christmassy vibe that I really don't know how to explain. I actually really enjoyed the story in this one, and the little bits of humor like Thomas angrily wishing snow off was pretty funny. And this episode had Santa, so... there's that, I guess. I'm also gonna have to give this one an S tier. Pretty fun episode overall. Autumn has come to Sodor, and Thomas stops next to a tractor in the field. His name is Terence. He's pretty chill. He introduces himself to Thomas, and Thomas, for some reason, just makes fun of him, like, what did bro do?
What ugly wheels you've got. They're not ugly, they're caterpillars. I can go anywhere. I don't need rails. I don't want to go anywhere, said Thomas.
Later, winter comes to Sodor, and since the snow is beginning to pile up, his driver tells Thomas that they'll need to put on a snowplow. He doesn't like that idea. He hates it so much, in fact, that when they get back to the sheds, it's horribly damaged. Next day comes, and since the snowplow won't fit, Thomas doesn't get to use it. That's something he's very happy about. Later, he rushes into a tunnel thinking how clever he is, but he suddenly runs into a pile of snow on the line. Thomas gets himself stuck, and all the passengers get out and try to dig the snow away. But as they dig, more snow slips down until Thomas is almost buried.
And Thomas began to cry.
Birdie then comes to pick up the passengers, and Terence comes through the tunnel to help Thomas out of the snow. He pulls Annie and Clarabelle away, then comes back for Thomas. He struggles at first, but he finally drags Thomas out of the snow. Thomas thanks Terence for helping him out and puffs away. This episode was alright. I wouldn't say it's anything special like the two before it, but I'd say it's pretty good. I mean, it must have been good since they dedicated an entire song to this episode. Thomas's relationship with snowplows is something they never changed throughout the show, which I find funny, and this episode marks the first crash in the show. Kinda. I'm thinking an A tier for this one. Pretty solid. So, this is a Thanksgiving episode, and you might be wondering why a British show like Thomas has an episode around Thanksgiving. Well, let me give you a little background information. So when Thomas first came to the States, it aired on this live-action show called Shining Time Station, and Mr. Conductor, who most of you will probably know from Magic Railroad, would tell the Thomas stories to the kids at the station. Now, the stories that he would tell to the kids related to what was happening in the episode. The Shining Time episode that this one aired with, which is called Billy's Party, centered around Thanksgiving. So since Thomas is a British show and didn't have an episode that correlated with Thanksgiving, I guess they decided to take Thomas and Percy's Christmas adventure and change it around to focus at Thanksgiving. They went about this by changing the dialogue.
I won't be able to say Happy Christmas to all my friends.
I won't be able to say Happy Thanksgiving to all my friends.
And completely deleting the scene where Thomas and Percy talk about Santa. But since they cut that scene out, the audio isn't synced properly, so sometimes you'll hear random puffing noises in the background when they really shouldn't be happening.
All the engines had gone back to the sheds, except Toby.
And these edits didn't really matter anyways because the ending is clearly shown to take place on Christmas. I mean, look at that tree. So while the UK version of this episode is great and has a sweet ending, the US version, which is on this DVD, isn't very good. Its re-edits are poorly done, and the whole idea of a Thanksgiving episode in Thomas immediately falls flat on its face, since the show takes place in the UK anyways. I'm thinking a C tier on this one. Not very good. Peter Sam seems to be having trouble with a loose funnel after he complains about it to the others, but the others just laugh him off. Rain comes and turns hillside streams into torrents, which threaten to wash the line away. Rusty keeps helping workmen go up and down the line, removing branches so that water can flow away. Rusty's driver says that the track bed near the tunnel was swept away and says that they'll have to repair the damage immediately. So they go and do just that. Later, Peter Sam crosses the newly repaired track, and since the tunnel is curved, Peter Sam's driver can't see through it.
"There's something hanging from the roof," shouted his driver. Peter Sam came out of the tunnel a different-looking engine.
The conductor tells Peter Sam that what knocked his funnel over was a large piece of ice. They continue until they find an old drain pipe near the track and decide to use it as a funnel. He finishes the job and the other engines laugh at his predicament. Later, the day finally comes when his new funnel comes in. Peter Sam doesn't seem too impressed and says it looks squashed. Topham shrugs this off by saying it's something special. Ace later revealed to us that the funnel has special pipes that make puffing easier for him. Despite this episode being honestly really simple, it's pretty fun. Peter Sam losing his funnel and just looking pissed was funny, and the episode has those very specific shots that are exclusive to season 4. Here's a random fun fact. Duke's happy face from his large model is used for the close-up shots of Peter Sam's funnel. Yeah, this episode was alright. I'm thinking a B tier. It's wintertime on Sodor, and the engines are talking about how there's more snow expected to fall later. James says that they'll have to wear their snowplows, and Henry teases Thomas about his distaste for them. That night, the snow falls down heavily, and next morning, Topham tells Thomas that he needs to collect a special from Callan's station. Thomas asks him if he has to wear the snowplow, and Topham tells him that he has to.
The fitters, his driver, and firemen all helped with Thomas's snowplow. Big, horrid, awkward thing, Thomas grumbled.
He arrives at Callan, picks up the Christmas tree, and steams off to Maithwaite. When he arrives, Toby tells him that he's glad that he has his snowplow on since he can't clear the snowdrifts by himself. The two engines set off, and on their way, Thomas accidentally hits a rock from under the snow, causing his plow to break off. His driver tries to stop, but suddenly they
Hit the water tower. Cinders and ashes, exclaimed Thomas.
His driver says that they can't go any further, but Thomas doesn't back down and says that he can make it. It's not easy, but he sets off without a plow. Even after struggling to get through more snowdrifts, the two arrive safely at the village station with the tree. The next day, Topham credits Thomas for his determination and says that since there aren't any spare plows, he doesn't get to use one.
Oh, thank you, sir, grinned Thomas.
This one was great. Thomas's distaste for snowplows is always funny to watch, and that crash, while random, was great. Not to mention Thomas's character in this episode. If this was Thomas from seasons 1 or 2, he probably would have just given up and not delivered the tree. This episode has probably one of my favorite examples of Thomas's character change. I'm feeling a solid A tier on this one. It's an icy day on Sodor, and Topham tells the engines that a big freeze is coming that night, so he assigns Percy and James to deliver extra coal to the stations. Thomas teases Percy by saying that Jack Frost might get him. Percy timidly asks who that is, and James tells Thomas that he isn't scary. Night comes, and Percy tells himself that Jack Frost isn't scary. Meanwhile, James, while puffing along his route, complains about Percy being scared. Percy makes the last delivery, and the station master tells them that they need twice as much as coal to last the freeze. And Percy tells him that they can have the rest of his coal. So, they park Percy into a siding with only a lamp by his side, and Percy asks his crew if Jack Frost will find him. They laugh him off and tell him that Elizabeth will give him more coal in the morning. They leave, and it starts to snow. More ice and snow pile up on Percy as James is on his way back to the sheds. On his way back, he notices odd shadows and scoffs about Jack Frost. As James passes by, he notices Percy's icy appearance, thinks he's Jack Frost, and hurries away. Next morning, Elizabeth brings more coal to Percy, and the firelighter lights Percy's fire. Soon, all the ice and snow on him melt away. Later, he arrives at the sheds while James is bragging to the other engines about seeing Jack Frost.
I saw scary Jack Frost last night. He even knows my name. He also knows that you ran away, teased Percy.
I'm very mixed on this episode. On one hand, this episode visually is great. Those shots of the engines passing through the forests are great, and having this episode's main duo be James and Percy was a pretty good choice. They work off of each other very nicely. What I'm not the biggest fan of, however, is the narration. Now, the UK narration is great. Michael Angelis' narration is always expressive, but holy shit, the US narration is so boring and emotionless, which is strange considering the narration is done by Alec Baldwin. You know, the guy who narrated season 5, and it sounded like this.
Help! I can't! You were quite right, Thomas. Making someone happy does cheer you up. I just can't get up to speed. Sick me? Never.
You know, he was really expressive with his voice in season 5. I mean, it might not sound that bad, but let's compare two clips from the same episode.
Hello, James, muttered Percy icily. Scary Jack Frost.
Hello, James, muttered Percy icily. Scary Jack Frost, cried James.
I know that at the time he was going through a divorce with Kim Basinger, so that probably explains why he sounds so lifeless in this episode and basically season 6 as a whole. I'm thinking a B tier for this one. It's fun, but the narration brings it down. The wind blows around Sodor, and Toby is on his way back to his shed. Suddenly, he stops and notices Farmer McColl waving a red flag. He tells Toby that the phone lines are down, all the roads are blocked, and his sheep have just started lambing. He says that they're trapped on the hillsides cut off by snow, and Toby asks how they can help. McColl says that they need a vet ASAP, and his driver says that they'll have to stop at the next signal box to phone the vet. They puff to the station box, and the driver phones ahead to the station. Topham and the vet are waiting at the station when Toby arrives. He tells them the predicament the lambs are in, and Topham sends Duck away to go clear the track. But since so much snow has fallen, the track is completely blocked, meaning Duck can't plow through anymore. They go back to the station and tell them that the weather is getting worse. Then, Toby gets an idea and remembers that his old branch runs out on the same line. Topham says that it would be too dangerous to cross since it won't hold Duck's weight, and Toby says that he might be able to run on it. Toby sets off on his journey, and a blizzard starts blowing. Toby forgets that an old worn-down bridge is on their travels, which is kinda weird considering like a minute ago he said that he knew the branch very well. But anyways, Toby slowly and carefully crosses the bridge as it starts creaking and groaning. They successfully make it through with the vet, and he and McColl walk away to go find the lambs. They soon come back and say that they need a place for the lambs to keep warm. Toby says that Henrietta has plenty of room, so they decide to put the lambs in her for the time being. Toby decides to stay for several days to make sure the lambs are safe. Later, McColl thanks Toby for his work, and Toby thanks him back. This episode is so damn sweet. Toby going through all of that just to help the lambs was great and shows his determination. Seeing Duck was neat, I guess, and the scene with Toby crossing the bridge was really well executed and felt pretty intense. I'm giving this one an A tier. And yeah, that's the end of the DVD. Overall, I think this DVD is great, and you should definitely pick it up for the holidays. Despite it having an episode that doesn't even correlate with Christmas, it's a pretty good DVD. Oh yeah, and here's the completed tier list with all the episodes ranked. I didn't really know how to address it, but here it is, I guess. But now that we've gotten all of that out of the way, the question still stands. Out of all of these, which is the best one to watch for Christmas? Well, it took some hard thought, but if I had to choose, I'd go with Thomas and the Missing Christmas Tree. I mean, how could I not? This episode just gets you in that comfy Christmas mood, you know? Especially with that ending with all the engines at the station. Even Diesel's there. The worst one, however, is, without a doubt, Thomas and Percy's mountain adventure. The whole story doesn't really make sense, and the re-edits are pretty bad. It isn't like the worst thing ever. It's not even the worst holiday episode. Not even close. But probably the weirdest thing about it is the fact that it's on this DVD. The title literally says Ultimate Christmas, so why is a Thanksgiving episode on here? It doesn't make sense. But yeah, that's gonna be it for today's video. Hope everyone has a good Christmas and a happy new year, and I'll see you guys next year for 2025. I have some interesting plans for this channel next year, so I might even make a video about that. But yeah, I'm probably gonna go watch some old Christmas specials like Rudolph and stuff like that. If you liked the video, make sure to like and subscribe. It helps out the channel a bunch. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next year.